What is the Lord's Supper? Christ commanded all Christians to eat bread and to drink from the cup in thankful remembrance of Him and His death. The Lord's Supper is a celebration of the presence of God in our midst, bringing us into communion with God and with one another, feeding and nourishing our souls. It also anticipates the day when we will eat and drink with Christ in His Father's kingdom. The second of the two Christian sacraments is the Lord's Supper, sometimes referred to as Holy Communion or the Eucharist. Jesus Christ, on the night He was betrayed, instituted this sacrament. And the Apostle Paul recounts it to us in his first letter to the Corinthians, that this was a regular practice of early Christian worship, and it's continued to be through the centuries. The Lord's Supper is a remarkable demonstration, a sign and a seal of the gospel. Paired with holy baptism, it helps us to see and to savor the fact that we live by gospel grace or not at all. The Lord's Supper is actually prepared in the Old Testament era by the sacrament of the Passover meal. In Exodus 12, the Israelites are about to leave Egypt, and God is going to perform one more remarkable miracle on their behalf before freeing them from servitude. God is going to kill the firstborn of the land of Egypt. Every firstborn male animal, every firstborn male child. In Exodus 12, we read these words. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month shall be for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year for you. Tell all the congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, every man shall take a lamb according to their father's houses, a lamb for a household. And if the household is too small for a lamb, then he and his nearest neighbor shall take according to the number of persons. According to what each can eat, you shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male, a year old. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of this month, when the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill their lambs at twilight. Then they shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts and the lintel of the houses in which they eat it. They shall eat the flesh that night, roasted on the fire. With unleavened bread and bitter herbs they shall eat it. Don't eat any of it raw or boiled in water, but roast it, its head with its legs and its inner parts. And you shall let none of it remain until the morning. Anything that remains until the morning you shall burn. In this manner you shall eat it, with your belt fastened, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And you shall eat it in haste. It's the Lord's Passover. For I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and on all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments. I am the Lord. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I'll pass over you, and no plague will befall you to destroy you, when I strike the land of Egypt. This day shall be for you a memorial day, and you shall keep it as a feast to the Lord. Throughout your generations, as a statute forever, you shall keep it as a feast. Here we see that life and freedom involve death and a sacrifice, a perfect, pure substitute. A male, a year old, the ideal creature from an agricultural, from a market standpoint, is to be sacrificed, is to be killed. Its blood is to be placed above the door as a sign that a substitute and a sacrifice has been rendered. And it's effective. Where the blood is, God does not come in judgment. What's also remarkable is that Israel is to feast on this meat. This is very countercultural. In the ancient world, it's very common for gods to have festival meals, but they always involve the people bringing food and the gods eating it. People work so that God can enjoy the largesse. And yet here, God works so that people can feast and enjoy the food. God goes about preparing their liberation. They get to sit and to enjoy a glorious meal. This is what's demonstrated in the sacrament of the Lord's Supper centuries later. Jesus, the great Passover lamb. Jesus, the one who ultimately sheds his blood on our behalf. He comes, He works, we feast, we eat. That's why the most radical words a pastor can ever say is in presenting the communion elements, telling the congregation that these are the gifts of God for the people of God. Priests of the ancient Near Eastern world, priests of the Greco-Roman era, wouldn't know what to do with such a statement. You bring gifts to God, and yet here Jesus says He presents gifts to us. The Lord's Supper is that remarkable practice. It's that glorious sacrament where we see God's deepest delight is to share His life with us. And we see God's constant commitment is to do everything necessary that this will be so, even shedding the blood and giving the body of His very Son. It's this that we celebrate in the Lord's Supper. As the Catechism mentions, it's something that we do in remembrance of what Christ did long ago, and so with faith we look backward to that which was offered on our behalf. It's something we do together here and now. Love, brother and sister alike, being shared at the common table. And it's something that we do with an eye to the future, with a hopeful eye looking in anticipation to that great marriage supper of the Lamb, where one day the glorious good news will be said that the dwelling of God is with men, that He's in our midst and He shall never leave us. The Lord's Supper is an appetizer of that feast yet to come. It's a sustaining grace, a means of grace as we journey from that moment of atonement long ago to that day of God's reign and of God's glory coming to pass. It's a glorious means of grace. It's a visible word whereby the promise of the gospel is made so real, so tangible, as its promise is signified and sealed, as we actually not just see the gospel, but receive life because we savor the gospel.